All right, so we're in the last week of our series called Friending, and we are, actually, no, this isn't the last week. Next week we're doing something pretty fun. Okay, I almost killed myself. All right, next week we're going to do something fun. Next week's like a question and answer time. So any questions you have about friendship, and then even beyond that, once we kind of do all the friendship stuff, we're going to let you guys text it in or write it in, and we'll put them up on the screen. I might even ask some adults to kind of help us out with this. We might even do some of that. So putting adults on notice now. You know, who knows what's going to happen. But it's just going to be a good time next week, so don't miss out next week. The week after, as we talked about, we are going to be going out to Sunrise, so that's going to be a lot of fun. So 2 weeks to Sunrise, 3 weeks to Let Church Night Out. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so but tonight's going to be like our last teaching night, I guess, in this series called Friending. And as we get into this, I was trying to think about some of my best friends throughout my time growing up. One of my best friends, his name was JJ. He was one of my best friends in high school. He was actually a year ahead of me. So he graduated. I can remember my senior year, I spent a ton of time with him, and I actually spent a ton of time with Abby. So those are like the two people that I spent a ton of time with. And JJ, I think I've shared some of the stories with JJ before, but JJ and I would always, we wouldn't necessarily get in trouble, but we'd find like places where stuff would just go wrong. So we went out to a soccer game out in Foxborough, Massachusetts, and we ran out of gas in the parking lot. So like it was crazy because we then had to walk 3 miles downhill to get to the gas station. At that point, the closest gas station was down by the interstate, so we had to walk 3 miles downhill and then 3 miles back uphill with a can of gas. And the game didn't end until 11 o'clock at night, so it was just like, we just found ourselves in difficult situations. I remember one time coming home from youth group, we were riding in his red Ford Escort, and he was going to spend the night at my house. I don't even know how that worked. Like, he would go off, he would drive off to school, but he'd spend the night at my house. So like, it was just kind of a weird relationship that we had. But he said, "Hey, do you guys have any soda at your house?" And I go, "No, I don't think we have any." He said, "All right, you know, because I went over at sunrise, so we'd actually pull up to the Cumberland Farms on my way home from church. We pull up to Cumbies, and he's like, "All right, I'm gonna go get some soda. I'll be right back." So I'm just sitting, and I'm actually driving his car at this point. He would let me drive his car, so I'm driving his car. I'm just sitting in the driver's seat, and I see him interacting with the person at the counter. And all of a sudden, I see the person at the counter going like this through the window at Cumberland Farms. And I see him just go like this. He ducks down, shoots out of Cumberland Farms as fast as he can. By this time, the clerk at the window is actually going like this, like through the window. He flings open the door, and he's like, just drive, man!" And like any good, sensible friend, I wanted to be there for my friend, and like, I just punch it. We get out of there, and I'm like, "Dude, what happened?" And then it's starting to hit on me, like, did you just shoplift like a bottle of soda, and now I'm an accessory to a crime? Like, what just happened? And he goes, he says to me, he's like, and then he just starts laughing. I'm like, what is going on in this moment? He goes, I'm at the counter, and I was short I was like short like 2 quarters. And immediately I'm like, I'm going to jail for like shoplifting here. And, you know, I like immediately just go like, and the person behind the counter goes, "Here, I have 2 quarters. I can take care of that for you." And I go, "Thank you, sir." And the person behind the counter looks up at him and goes, "I'm a woman." And then he goes, "Oh, sorry, sir, ma'am." And he gets all kind of confused and flustered. And by this point, the person behind the counter just starts going, "I'm a woman. I'm a woman. I'm a woman!" And he just ducks out of there as fast as he can. And that's what I see the lady do. She's screaming through the window at him, "I'm a woman!" At which point, you know, I just start laughing. I was terrified. But you got to be there for your friends, right? That's just kind of the code of the culture. You got to be there for your friends. If they need you to speed away because there's some person that is claiming to be a woman screaming at you through, like, you gotta fly out of there as fast as you can. So JJ and I were kind of always there, and this is where our story is actually going to take a serious turn. When I went away to college, JJ had stayed. He went to community college for a little bit, and then stopped going, started working, and he got in with kind of a bad friend group. And I can remember Thanksgiving, my first year of college. I was all excited. I'm getting to come home Thanksgiving break and the winter break. And I'm up at Word of Life Bible Institute, and normally I take the thruway home, but I decided to take Route 50 home just so I could like have some fun driving on some side roads. So I take Route 50 home and I drive down, and I get home and I stop in actually at my mother's work and surprise her. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to surprise her and stop in. And I can still remember her face, pale white, when she sees me walk in. And I asked her, hey, how are you doing? Like, everything okay? She's like, you just need to go home and talk to Dad. And I was like, oh, all right, well, what happened? And she's just go home and talk to Dad. And by this point, I'm just like, no, I'm not driving. Like, tell me what's the matter. And she said, last night on Route 50, JJ died in a car crash. He was drinking with a friend. They decided that they wanted to see how fast his little car could go. They got over 90 miles an hour. He lost control, and they hit a tree head on at 90 miles an hour. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. He was ejected out of the car and killed us. Now, I had a ton of emotions in that moment. There was anger, there was sadness, there was fear, there was frustration. But over the coming days, one of the things that I had dealt with was this was my best friend, and I went away to college, and I tried to stay in contact with him a little bit, but, you get in two different places, and it's hard, right? And one of the areas of guilt that I dealt with that hurt so much was I felt like I wasn't there for him. I don't know about you, maybe some of you have had to deal with that already with a friend or a loss of a friend. Maybe you just have friends that you're with and you got to deal with that pressure of being there for them. Or maybe you're a person that's saying, I wish somebody would be there for me. But that pressure of how to support a friend, that's the question I want us to think about tonight as we're kind of wrapping up this series. How do I support my friends? We talked about friendship being important. We talked about actually, instead of just trying to find friends, we find friendship with Jesus and we make friendship with others. That it's our responsibility to make friends, not just hope that we can find friends, people who come to us. And then we say, how do we find the right friends? Looking for people who actually would care for what's best for us and that we can care for what's best for them. But when it comes to support, if you have a friend, you're probably feeling pressure at different points to where I need to support them. I need to be there for them. That is like the code of this generation. Like, we got to be there for each other. And there's times to where you can't be and you feel guilty. Or times to where your friend maybe even wants you to be there for them, and you have all these other responsibilities that you have to take care of, and you just can't do it. Or you have so many friends that expect you to be there for you that you just feel like the weight of it and the amount of it, you just can't handle it. Or as I said earlier, maybe you're the person that's just like, I just wish somebody would be there for me, to care for me in the way that I feel like I need them to. So whether you're carrying the guilt of a friendship that you are just like, I'm not there for them, I'm just dealing with it over and over, or whether you need that, how are we supposed to support our friends? How are we supposed to deal with this? If you have your Bibles, if you don't have one, go ahead and grab one. But we're going to go, We're going to go to Hebrews chapter 3, verse 12 to 13. Guys, you can run it, and I'll take over from you. Yeah, you go ahead and do it. Hebrews chapter 3, we're going to look at this together. There's going to be a couple of verses that we're going to look at, but as far as opening our Bibles tonight, just looking at one verse or two verses, we're going to look at this one. Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 through 13. And I want us to think about not just how do we support our friends, but what if we weren't there just for their benefit? Or what if we weren't there to just be there for them? What if we actually supported them? And I want to talk about how that's a little bit different tonight than maybe the way that we would think of it. Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 through 13 says this, "See to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God." And so if you're a follower of Jesus, one of the things that God wants you to understand and to live with is that you should not turn away from him, because this is where life actually is. So see to it that you don't turn away from life. If you're not a follower of Jesus, even in this verse, God wants you to understand there's life here with you. And I want you to be able to experience it. But one of the ways to be able to see life, one of the ways to be able to experience life, is it just trying to, if you're trying to beat sin, if you're trying to beat what's wrong with what you're dealing with in life, if you're just trying to do it on your own and figure it out and just try to make it happen, maybe if I just spend more time praying, maybe if I just spend more time in the Bible, maybe if I just spend more time thinking, all those things are good. But how does the writer of Hebrews here, the book of Hebrews, how does this writer say that we're supposed to deal with this? To actually be intentional about seeking out who God actually is. Verse 13 says, "But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness." See, friends encourage you towards Jesus. This is one of the points that I want you to think about. True friends, when it comes down to how do they support you, they encourage you towards Jesus and away from sin. They're not just like, hey, I'm just going to leave you out on your own, and you can figure it out on your own. I actually am going to be part of your life encouraging you. One of the things I love about this passage, it says encourage one another daily. Think about that in your own life with the encouragement that you give people and how you care for people. Are you willing to sacrifice enough in your life so that you can love someone else and encourage them? How many of you, if you were to think about this past week, to say, I'm not even talking about encouraging people towards Jesus, I've just been an encouragement towards someone, and I've gone out of my way to try to encourage them. And you can sit there and go, all right, has that been me, or have I just been occupied with all the things that I have to do? Or have I been occupied with all the concerns that I have? Some of you are carrying heavy weights, heavier than maybe what you, I'll be honest, knowing some of your guys' stories, knowing some of your backgrounds, not knowing everybody here. But I bet you some of you right now, if we got into a private moment and there was complete trust, you would start to share some of the pain and some of the hurt to where you would just say, I wish it would be there. And all you can think about is that pain and that hurt. But one of the ways that we deal with this is not just trying to deal with the pain and the hurt, but actually turning and trying to encourage others. And that's what friendship is really about. That's what supporting each other is really about, encouraging each other. But as a follower of Jesus, it's not just encouraging each other, it's encouraging each other towards Jesus. That you're saying, hey, I love you so much, I want you to be like Jesus. Because that's where life actually is. Here's the question though, if we're supposed to be doing that, will there be times to where maybe a hard conversation needs to happen? If you really care about somebody, is there ever a time where a hard conversation needs to happen? But if we're there for friends, if we're being there for friends, I mean that means we want to make sure they're happy. If they're supposed to be happy, can we ever have a hard conversation with them? If it's supposed to be about their happiness, can we ever really have a hard conversation with them? If your friends delve into drugs, if your friends get into a relationship that's really bad for them, if you see your friend just becoming more inward and inward focused to where it's all about them and they're just being extremely selfish, or you just see their friends, they're just kind of giving up a little bit on God. Sometimes there's a hard conversation, and it doesn't have to be mean. It doesn't have to be harsh, but the conversation's not always easy. And the question we got to think about with this is, friends will tell you the hard things even if it hurts. A true friend will tell you hard things even if it hurts. Proverbs chapter 27, verses 5 and 6, it says, better is an open rebuke than hidden love. Think about that. It's better to have somebody openly rebuke you and actually say, hey, don't go this way, than to be basically saying, I love you so much, I'm just not going to say anything else. says, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. A friend will actually, maybe even at times, say something to where you're like, ow, that stings, that hurts. But a true friend will actually step in and do that not for, to make themselves look better or make themselves feel better, but because they actually care about you. But an enemy will actually just multiple kisses. In other words, it's just like, hey, you're awesome. I just want you to know how awesome you are. You're just awesome all the time. I just need you to know that over and over and over and over. It's just like flattery. There's a girl by the name of Ashlyn Walker. This is actually, she's a little girl. I don't know if you can read the little caption on the bottom, but she was born with a disorder to where she feels no pain. Now you might initially be like, that would be awesome. Because like I could do whatever I want and it's never gonna hurt. But growing up, she had to have an adult with her at all times. She never really got to experience freedom because, like, as a 3-year-old, she'd have an itch on her eye, and she'd just start to scratch. Now, here's the thing. If you have an itch on your eye and you start to scratch, you can do that for a little bit, right? But if the itch doesn't go away, but you start to dig, what hurts more, the itch or you digging? Digging. But for Ashlyn, she never felt the pain of the digging. And actually, when she was 18 months old, they took her to the doctor. This is when she found out they had the disorder. Her eye was starting to get swollen and blotchy. And they ended up putting some dye, and they found that she was actually scratching her cornea. And had no pain. Now, here's the question. Was she doing extreme damage to herself? So would pain have been a good thing for her in that moment? Yeah. Think about this in your relationship. Sometimes we don't want to enter into a spot to where there's going to be pain, but pain can actually provide more healing in the long run than just letting it go and being like, oh, you're just so cute. We're just going to let you. I mean, I don't want to tell you to stop because you're just adorable. Meanwhile, her eye is about to fall. See, true friends will tell you the hard things even when it hurts. So friends don't try to make you happy, they try to love you. That's a big thing when it comes to supporting friends. A true friend's goal is not to make you happy. A true friend's goal is to actually love you and do what's best for you. Here's the question for you guys. Are you that type of friend with someone else? I'm not saying, there's like a random person you're like, yeah, they're going crazy, so I'm just going to go up to them and like tell them what's up. No. I'm talking about you have a friend, and you can see that there's something up in there, like, and so you actually want to engage with them. You want to ask them some questions. You instead of just walking up to them and be like, hey, I'm concerned about this, you need to stop. You're like, hey, what's going on? I really care about you. I'm seeing this. What's happening? And you're actually starting to engage in a hard conversation. See, true friends will do this even if it hurts. It may hurt your relationship. It may actually cost you your relationship. I've had it with friends where I've had some tough conversations, and they basically said, get away. Had it with family members. I typically found years later, those people end up coming back because they'll say, you were the only person that really cared in that moment. And even though it cost us our relationship, you actually showed me that you were a true friend. So how do I support my friends? I gotta be willing to tell them the hard things, even if it hurts, but for their benefit, not just to make myself look better. Two more ideas on how we can support our friends. These ones are big. Friends will always have healthy boundaries, especially with the opposite sex. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, this is just part of it, but it says, treat younger women as sisters with absolute purity. He's talking to a guy here, and he's like, listen, treat the younger ladies that you're around like sisters. And it's not just like, hey, so this is my sister, this is how I would treat her, so, like my sister, I'd punch her in the face and be fine with it. So, it's not talking about that. It's saying, All right, if you were to trust someone else with your sister, how would you want them to treat them? Yeah, you might not treat your sister very well, or your brother very well. But if you truly cared for them, how would you want the other person to treat them? How would you want somebody else to care for them and treat them? And so, one of the things you got to be careful. You got to be careful with being alone. I don't want to get too far into this, but particularly with the Me Too movement, I think it is good to call out wrong that's being done. So I'll just say this to the guys. Don't put yourself in spots that you could do wrong or be accused of doing wrong, even if you haven't done anything wrong. Be smart. I can remember growing up, my parents actually had a policy. I wasn't allowed to ride alone with another teenage girl without their permission. It wasn't because they were like, yep, you're just going to look at them and you're going to sleep with them. It had nothing to do with that. It was just, we want to protect you. And it wasn't until I honestly was a senior and started dating Abby, and they set some pretty hard boundaries, and then we even set some pretty hard boundaries on ourselves to make sure that we could actually care for each other instead of just maybe doing what we were doing in the moment. Sometimes a conversation with a person from the opposite sex is too deep. I'm just going to be honest. There are some things that you probably just don't need to talk about because it's not going to be helpful. And you're like, oh, we're just brother and sister. We really care about each other? No. There's just generally a line, and I don't know where that line is. Sometimes it moves, but there is a line somewhere to where you're now getting into a deeper part of the relationship. Sometimes it's even on spiritual things. I've just seen it so to where it's like, hey, let me tell you about my devotions. I'm going to tell you about your devotions. Great, fantastic. But for some couples, it just intertwines their hearts so much that now, when they see, it's not going to quite work out, or it's not going to go well, it's like ripping two people apart. It's like ripping two sides. Like, you ever get the Band-Aid and you rip it off? It's painful. And so, I don't have any specifics on what are healthy boundaries. Maybe if you want to ask next week, we can do that. But you actually have to have conversation, and if we're talking about good friendship, invite people in that are maybe older than you or people that desperately care about you and say, hey, what would be some healthy boundaries for us? So friends will have healthy boundaries with the opposite sex, but here's the thing. Friends will also have healthy boundaries with each other. Psalm chapter 16, verses 5 and 6, it says, Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. Most of the time when we ask people to be there for us, we are asking them to satisfy us and fulfill us. We're asking them to complete what is lacking in us. Part of the guilt that I felt when JJ died was I wasn't able to be there for him. In other words, the piece that was wrong and the piece that he needed help with, I was supposed to fulfill that for him. Here's the real question. Who's supposed to fulfill that for him? Is it me? Or am I taking on somebody else's responsibility? Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. You're the one that makes me secure. Not my friends. Because the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. In other words, God has actually set boundary lines for you in your life, and they fall in pleasant places. And in other words, you all have individual boundaries that God has even set you up with, in just the way He's created you. And He set you up with them so that you can thrive and succeed in the life that He's given you. But when you don't understand that and you don't actually live them out, when you are just constantly having to be there for the other person, you're not actually starting to live out the boundary lines of what it looks like to have a healthy relationship. When we look to be there 24/7 for our friends, we actually start to take God's place, because guess who's the only one that can really be there 24/7 for our friends? And when we seek to be that, we actually will start to enable them to want to rely on us. And maybe you start feeling anxiety because you're trying to do it all, but you just can't. And so this is why we need to have healthy boundaries. It's healthy to put away your phone at times and just be like, hey, for this period of time, I can't talk. I need to stop. I need to sleep. I need to rest. I need to get some homework done. I need to, and I'm not trying to be selfish, like we're going to come back and we're going to talk again, but for this time. And maybe you need to be honest about those boundaries. Actually talk with them about it. Don't just be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not talking to you next week. Like, what is that? See, that's not loving. Don't fall into the trap that if I don't do this, they will reject me. Or if I don't do this, they will go off the deep end. Or if I don't, you fill in the blank. I'm going to read a quote to you and then we'll finish. It's from a lady by the name of Ruth Blanton Farleys. Her name's Ruth. This is what she said. Every time I go out in the world, I pray this simple prayer. Lord, let me live within the boundary lines you've drawn for me. Let no word or deed cross those lines on my side or the world's without your jurisdiction. Some of the words that I intentionally let him filter out now include these things like, where have you been? Friend says that. Sometimes they actually have to filter that out. Where have you been? Or, you're taking forever to answer my text. Or, why can't you ever do lunch? I don't want to hurt my friends. And I believe relationships and community are what God has designed. They are from the Bible. They're biblical. But if your idea of a good friendship is based on accessibility or being there for someone, then consider this. The Word says, or the Bible says, a friend loves at all times. Proverbs 17:17. It doesn't say a friend is always at your beck and call. It doesn't say a friend will immediately respond when you have questions or need to vent about some frustration. It doesn't say a friend will make it every single time to an event that means something to you. While it certainly feels nice to have someone who does all that, it doesn't necessarily mean you're being loving or that you are being loved. Remember that love is first of all patient. It doesn't have a timeline for a response to a trivial issue. Love is kind. It doesn't need to chat with a girlfriend about how ridiculous someone looked in the carpool line ASAP. Love isn't envious. It doesn't brag. It's not selfish. It doesn't get angry easily. It doesn't keep track of how many times you screw up. And the list goes on and on and on and on. It turns out that love, as defined by the scriptures, doesn't look much like being there at all. It's infinitely better, richer, and more fulfilling. So as we ask, how do I ultimately support my friends? This is the quote I'm going to leave you with and then we can go off the group. Don't be there for them. Love them like Jesus. Don't carry the weight of trying to be there for your friends. Love them. Love them like Jesus. I'm sure you guys can probably speak into this, or you got questions, or you can talk about it some more in your groups. But I'm going to let you guys go. You guys can talk about it with your groups, and we'll go from there. All right?